When we start with, she had some very illustrious students.
Yes, she did. And I was trying to explain how I met her. Anne Doremus, the woman who was living with me at International House, asked me to attend with her across the street a rehearsal of Margaret Bonds and a friend, and they had a duo piano team. And they were playing in, I would say, the largest nightclubs in the United States. They were due then for a performance at what was known as Cafe Society, downtown. They had been to California, to Hollywood, they'd been all over the United States. And so I was listening to this rehearsal and found it so interesting because of their arrangements. They had used the pianos percussively. They were inventive in many ways. And so I became friendly with Margaret after that. She took my address, and then she belonged to many organizations. Like, she asked me if I would sing. She often did recitals at St. Philip's Church, Episcopal Church in Holloman, and said, will you come and sing? And then she promoted her own compositions through me by teaching them to me. So we got to the point where we were also not only performing in New York, but we actually went on tour together. Through black universities, people she knew, we went to Chicago, to where she knew many people, and the National Association of Negro Musicians was very prevalent, and we put on a concert for them in one of the churches there. We finally got up enough nerve to travel to the Caribbean. We went to Bermuda, we went to Nassau, we went to where else? Jamaica, and did concerts. In the meantime, she's still composing. So whenever she had an opportunity to promote herself, she'd call me up. I sang, for example, for Martin Luther King. He came and made a speech at Columbia University. Don't remember what it was called, some sort of lecture or something, I don't remember. But it was the big auditorium at Columbia. And she said to me, you know, I have written this cantata called the Ballad of the Brown King. And she says, and I've dedicated it to him, but he's never heard it. And she said, there is a place within the score where I'd like to take out the solo and ask you if you would sing it. And I did. I'm trying to think of the things that we did. She also set up, during Black History Month, concerts in Brooklyn. I can't remember. I have to go back and look at this. And we did concerts in Brooklyn, in Connecticut, all around the New York area. So that began a relationship.
What did you like most, Mrs. Holloman, about Margaret Bonds' art songs?
Well, first of all, she had a wonderful exposure. She had done a lot of jazz and abstracted scores when Tin Pan Alley was going. So she developed her ability to write jazz tunes as well as regular composition. So she incorporated both unconsciously, or perhaps definitely she wanted to do it. And anyway, I found it most interesting, and she picked poems that were, well, she was very friendly with Langston Hughes, and Langston used to have these meetings at his house. And when I say meetings, he had artists, he had poets, musicians, and he had within his home a woman who had been with him as he grew up, and her name was Toy Harper. He called her Aunt Toy. And so Langston Hughes became one of the poets that Margaret used a great deal. And Toy Harper used to do all of the cooking. Wonderful cook. Made the best apple pie I ever had. And she dedicated her time to taking care of Langston. But she also catered for his friends. She had these evenings with Langston. And it became very, very, very interesting for me. I wasn't that well versed with people in Harlem. I'd only been there with going to school there in Columbia, but I didn't know a whole lot of people, and particularly not a whole lot of musicians.
Going back to Toy Harper, she appears as lyricist on the music of Hall Johnson, Florence Price, and Margaret Bonds. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was present when Miss Harper was in the kitchen cooking, and she began singing a tune. Hall Johnson was one of the members that had been invited. And we talked about various things, various occasions. Somebody would read poetry, somebody would talk about what they were doing, and they actually, Hall got up from the table as Toy was singing, and she was not singing very loud and humming and working. And he went into the kitchen and said, Toy, what is that tune you're singing? And she sang it. And he said, does it have words? She said, yes, they're Langston's. And she sang it. And he went and got his book, musical score, and copied it and wrote it down. And it's in his book today. Now, Florence Price had also utilized that same poem. And it's a different version, and had done it before. I don't think, it's not the same tune, and I don't think Hall knew that. But they exist today, two different versions. At the Feet of Jesus it is.
Can you tell us anything about lyricists Roger Chaney and Marjorie May? Did you meet them?
Roger Chaney was one of the first lyricists that Margaret tried to use, because he gave her songs which were more in the jazz vein. There's a song he wrote the lyrics for called Rainbow Gold. That was one of her first ones, which was published. I don't know anything about the other lady you asked about.
Okay, did you sing any of their songs? Perhaps Footprints on My Heart,
No.
or Let's Make a Dream Come True?
No,
Mist Over Manhattan?
no. Now
No.
the reason being, they were on the lighter side, and Margaret was interested in promoting some of her true, I would say, art songs with me. So I didn't do much of that with her.
Okay, well, speaking of such, tell us about the wonderful town hall concert that you gave.
Well, I gave several, but the first one you're speaking of is the debut. I made a debut. I had been studying voice a long time. She remembers the debut very well, this daughter of mine I'm pointing to. And she actually passed out programs. She sat on the steps, just sat on the steps and said, "That's my mother, that's my mother." And I was sort of embarrassed, but it was cute. People liked it. And this was my first experience at giving a professional concert. And I had gone to great lengths to try to make it exceptionally good. I had worked German, unusual German songs with the brother of Lotte Lehmann. I spent 12 years with him, Fritz Lehmann. I spent about 8 years with Eva Gautier, who was a French coach, French teacher, and was a very good friend of Nadia Boulanger, who was a center of French composition, and therefore she knew all she knew Ravel and Boulanger. She had all these people. And she introduced me to compositions of young composers. One black one being Howard Swanson. Ava Gautier had a library in her apartment where the music was packed all around the ceilings, and she could reach up and pull down actual scores that they had given her, which nobody had ever heard of. So I did Howard Swanson. I did new compositions of Ned Rorem. I'm trying to think of composers. Well, there were a lot of them, and I can't come up with them right away. What she would say to me, "Now, if you find anything here," and I had a wonderful pianist, she said, "if you find you could use this for your concert. Use it. Take this and take that." And I said, "All right." Of course, I had to have them. Didn't have Xerox in those days. I had to have them a blueprint. We went to the place where they did the blueprints. Well, what else can I tell you?
What was it like to premiere at Town Hall with Margaret Bonds, and what were the pieces that you sang?
I didn't premiere with Margaret Bonds. She was not my accompanist for my debut. I had a man by the name of Lowell Farr, who had actually been one of the accompanists for an artist concern, not Columbia Concerts, but its rival, National Artists or something incorporated.
Did you perform at Town Hall with Margaret Bonds?
I did once.
And what was that?
That was for a black concert with the compositions and various composers. She played for everybody.
Did you perform her works?
Yes, I did.
What were they?
Now you're asking me. I don't remember.
Okay.
Because I did several of those, like with the National Association of Negro Musicians. And it depended. I did not Songs of the Seasons. Oh, I can't remember the title. Can't remember the titles of those 4 songs that everybody sings now. And I don't remember it.
Okay, so can you tell us
Yes, you know
about...
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember the titles anyway.
That's okay. Can you tell us
Because my
about
mouth
the
is
Jubal
wide.
Blake, please?
Did I what?
With Jubal Blake.
Yubi.
Yes, can you tell us about that?
Yes. I'm not sure how I met Yubi and Noble. Oh yes, I do know. There was a young man by the name of Hutchinson, Larry Hutchinson, who heard me sing somewhere and came up to me and said that he was doing backers auditions for Eubie Blake and Noble Sissel for a show which they had done many, many years ago in 1922, and it had stayed on Broadway for over 2 years. It was called Shuffle Along. And he said, I want to take you to Noble and let him hear you sing. So I went, and for 5 years at least, we toured with Noble and with Eubie Blake, trying to sell the show to make money to put it back on Broadway.
And the we meaning you and Margaret Bonds?
No, Margaret was not in it.
Okay,
This was Hutchinson.
okay.
Mhm.
Dream
And
portraits.
it ended up going on Broadway.
Dream portraits.
Thank you. Dream Portraits by Margaret Bonds. 3 songs.
And that was
I
somewhere?
Too Sing America.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Titles go for me.
Okay, how many of Margaret Bonds' art songs were written for you?
Well, that's a good question. She gave me, I can't say any of them were written for me, but there are 3 definite songs which she gave me and told me she wanted me to sing. I did. They've never been published. One is called Feast, and the other one is, I'm bad with titles today. And there was one called Sing a Ho, which eventually became published. But my name isn't on it.
What did you think about the Glenn Miller recording of Bonds' Spring Will Be So Sad?
It's a beautiful song. And I didn't know that it had been recorded. And it was passed on to me secondhand. Not by Margaret, by somebody else. And I was utterly shocked because I did not know about it. That was one that went beyond me.
What is your favorite African American spiritual arrangement by Margaret Bonds?
You can tell the world.
Why?
She said that this is perfect for your voice. I had done, he's got the whole world in his hands, one of the few that knew it and started it. And then she said, I've got this other one. You can tell the world. You have to sing these. We're going to do them on tour. I said, okay. And they were some of the spirituals that she did.
What about Ezekiel saw the wheel?
There were other spirituals which I did. Ezekiel saw the wheel that Margaret said. A whole lot of them. I can't even remember.
The Ballad of the Brown King.
Yes.
Okay, current publications seem to say either Hughes asked Bonds or Bonds asked Hughes to be a part of this. What is, seems to be some confusion. Do you know the definitive answer?
I cannot give the answer. She and Langston were so close. She knew his poetry. I'm of the opinion that she asked him if she could set it. I'm not positive. But the poem was quite well known, had come out as one of his good works. And I think she probably found it so and went and asked him.
You earlier said that Margaret Bonds was very active with different organizations. and that she had also had some association with Martin Luther King. Do you know what other civil rights groups she might have been a part of, the NAACP or the SCLC or any other organization?
No, I don't think she was involved.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, you said, what was it, you made a statement.
Martin Luther King?
Yes, she didn't know Martin Luther King.
Okay.
But whoever I have these programs somewhere. And Martin Luther King came, and she was asked by the organization that presented him to do some music.
Did he respond to that, to her,
Oh,
to her
yes.
music?
Yes.
And what was the
We
response?
had, as a matter of fact, I'm very heartsick about it, there was a photograph made of Margaret, myself, and Martin Luther King, which I don't know where it is today.
My goodness.
And
Did she ever talk about the South?
South,
Mhm.
except for touring, no.
No.
You mean the political,
Right, the political climate.
sometimes. But she didn't make a big deal out of it because I don't think she actually lived in the South at all. Trying to think, she toured through the South. But I don't remember any real, except sometimes when we had the dinners, they would talk about something that happened to somebody
Mm-hmm.
and, discuss it. But it was not a political wheel that she followed.
Okay. Do you know anything about her family in terms of her leaving New York and her family and such?
Well, I do remember when her mother died. Her mother was in Chicago, and Margaret was in New York. And it broke Margaret up quite a bit. But Margaret married a man by the name of Richardson, and he was not a musician. She continued to do concerts, and even the duo concerts, all over the United States. She eventually had a daughter, and Larry, his name was Larry Richardson, Larry took care of the child, actually, so she could perform. But it got so that their lives drifted apart, and she was trying to do composing and found it difficult, and she actually almost had to give up her daughter in order to do the composition and do what she did with the touring.
Her colleagues, I mean, it's been noted somewhere that she appeared to be a very bubbly natured person. Did you find her to be a very happy person?
Well, she was and she wasn't. I think the bubbliness came because actually she had some serious problems
I understand.
with her love life. So I think that was the main thing. She tried to push it out of the way. And she was fun to be with.
What did you love most about your friend Margaret Bonds?
Because she taught me so much. She actually taught me a great deal about compositions, which I had never, I assumed these compositions came, but I never knew how anybody attempted to compose. And I found out from her. I also learned, or I met so many people who eventually had an influence on my life. David Garvey, who was the Intine Price's accompanist, lived across the hall from Margaret. And so I knew him. She introduced me to half of New York. So that made me, of course, adhere to her, and she also found me useful to promote her compositions. So we're kind of using each other, but we enjoyed it.
So you would say you were very much chosen by her to sing her music.
Yes,
Do you
I
think
was.
that's because your voice was so well suited to her music?
Yes and no. She told me right away, I don't think this is right for you. Don't do this. She picked what she thought I would do well. And when I started singing, He's Got the Whole World, not the other one. Yes, He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. She said, I don't know anybody right now that can do that as well as you do. And I said, well, no, nobody else is singing it. I tried to play it down, but they did. They picked it up, and it's gone.
Oh, what were your favorite pieces?
Of hers?
Yes.
Um,
What did you enjoy performing the most?
There's a piece called Dream Variations, one of the pieces, 3 pieces, Dream Variation. I liked the Song of the Seasons. There was one that was rather, I'm trying to come up with it. Summer Storm, and what are the titles? I can remember the tune. Terrible. I haven't been singing in a long time. Let's see what else Margaret wrote I liked. Of course, I did the Singer Hold. And Ezekiel saw the wheel. Oh, there's so many of hers that I can't even think of at the moment.
If there was any message that you wanted to leave about her, to give to the future generation of singers and poets and people who admire her talent, what would it be?
She was engrossed with music. She went into it 100%. As I said, she loved her daughter dearly, but she almost gave her daughter up in order to pursue composition, performances, touring, whatever. And she learned so much from it that it incorporated values in life which she could bring to her music. And she tried very hard in her way not to copy anybody. She brought Margaret to her music. And we find it today, it's very noticeable with the jazz influence that she puts into her compositions. So, and she was a wonderful person. Wonderful person. Put herself out for people. Didn't make a whole lot of money, but she had what she needed and found ways to make it. She had influences on people. She could persuade you one way or the other to go this way or go that way. I can't think of it. I'm sorry that I didn't have time to really pull out some of her
No, this is wonderful.
materials.
No, this is really wonderful. Is there
Um,
anything else that you think that you might like to tell us? But what you've said is fantastic.
I do have something that suddenly dawned on me. I asked Margaret to play for me the There's an association of Negro businessmen